Today's lesson is The Age of the Cyborg Dawns. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And my name is Helen.
And in today's program, we're going to be talking about cyborgs. Not the science fiction kind, but the kind that you see every day in society. People who have some sort of implants or some kind of machines working inside their bodies. And, of course, this is getting more and more common.
Yes, in fact, just a few decades ago, the word cyborg was associated with science fiction movies. For instance, the first time the term, I think, became really popular was after the movie The Terminator came out. And that must have been 30 years ago, the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, in which he played a cyborg killer. So a person who is sort of half robot, half machine, and half human. And this cyborg was sent back from the future to kill people. And that was my first encounter with the word cyborg.
Indeed, I think it's probably the first time a lot of people heard that word cyborg. It's basically two words put together. Cyber, which means of computers or robots, and organism, which means a living thing. So cyborg. And that's what we'll be talking about today, at least how it exists in the modern world. So let's get to this, everybody. Let's begin our lesson by reading the first part, and then we'll come back to talk about it.
The age of the cyborg dawns. Cyborg. The word describes a being that is part living flesh and part machine, and it was, until recently, mostly a part of the vocabulary of science fiction. Today, however, cyborgs really do walk among us. They are the hundreds of thousands of people with inner ear implants that restore their lost hearing, for example. They are the more than 100,000 sufferers of Parkinson's disease that have deep brain implants to control their symptoms.
大家好，第一部分我们看到单字 implant， 这个字是名词，指医疗植入物。例如 The cost of dental implants are very expensive. 植牙的费用非常昂贵。另外，这个字也可以当作动词，作为动词时念作 implant， 意思是植入或是移植。我们可以说 The vet implanted an identification chip in the dog's ear. 兽医在那只狗的耳朵植入了一个辨识身份的晶片。也可以说 Surgeons implanted an artificial joint in the patient. 外科医生把人工关节移植到病患体内。
So the title of today's lesson is The Age of the Cyborg Dawns. And just a note about the word dawn in the title. Usually the word dawn is a noun. That's how we know it. And it refers to the early morning. But here, dawn functions as a verb and it means to begin. So the age of the cyborg begins. Now, diving right into the first sentence, it says here, cyborg. The word describes a being that is part living flesh and part machine, and it was, until recently, mostly a part of the vocabulary of science fiction. So in this first sentence, we have a definition of cyborg, which is a being. A being means a human being or a creature. It could also be an animal that is part living flesh. So it has skin and muscles, it has meat, and part machine. And cyborg was, until recently, something that we only saw or read about in science fiction.
And today, however, cyborgs really do walk among us. They actually do exist. They are the hundreds of thousands of people with inner ear implants that restore their lost hearing, for example. So there are many examples of people who are walking around among us and they have implants, things that are surgically added to their bodies. They have to have surgery, so these things are put in their bodies. We have an example here, inner ear implants. And maybe you're deaf and you want to hear again. So in some cases, you can have an operation in which some kind of device is implanted in your inner ear, inside your ear, and it will allow you to hear. It helps restore those people's lost hearing. And again, that is an example.
Right. So people with inner ear implants are an example of a cyborg. And there are other examples, other people who may be considered cyborgs. They are the more than 100,000 sufferers of Parkinson's disease that have deep brain implants to control their symptoms. So people with Parkinson's disease have certain symptoms. Symptoms are signs that point to a particular illness. So I could say, for instance, that sore throat is a common symptom of the cold. If you have a cold, then chances are you have a sore throat or you have sore throat. And people with Parkinson's disease have certain symptoms. But these symptoms can be controlled through deep brain implants. So these implants, these machines or gadgets are implanted, are put into the brain. Deep brain meaning it is likely put deep inside the brain.
Yes, maybe you know the actor Michael J. Fox. He has Parkinson's disease, and that is a disease in some cases where the patient or the sufferer moves uncontrollably. So if a person who suffers from Parkinson's disease has an implant in their brain, it may control their movements or control their symptoms. And again, if you have a certain kind of disease or a certain kind of affliction, you are a sufferer of that disease. You might be a sufferer of Parkinson's disease. Maybe you know somebody who is a sufferer of Alzheimer's disease, for example. And of course, each disease has its own symptoms. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on to the second part. It's kind of long, so please listen carefully.
It is true that many of these people probably wouldn't describe themselves as cyborgs, but rather as people making use of the latest medical technology. Others, though, are more eager to embrace the term. Take, for example, Kevin Warwick, an English professor who claims to be the world's first cyborg. In 2002, he had the nerves in his left arm connected to an implant capable of sending signals to a computer. Among other things, the implant allowed him to control a robot hand using just his own movements. Similarly interested in enhancing normal human abilities is Moon Ribas, a dancer and cyborg activist, whose arm implant enabled her to sense earthquakes happening anywhere in the world. Indeed, there is a term for those who want to merge humans with machines. Known as transhumanists, these people hope that by incorporating technology into the human body, they can surpass the limits of regular people and become something altogether smarter, faster, and stronger, a post-human.
第二部分我们看到动词 enhance 指增强或是提高。例如 There are many Americans who believe that bacon will enhance any dish. 有许多美国人认为培根可以让任何一道菜变得更好吃。再来我们看到单字 merge 这个字是动词，指使融合或是使合并，像是 The two rivers merge before emptying into the sea. 那两条河流汇合后再流入大海。再举一个例子 We merged all of our ideas to create this brilliant work of comedy. 我们融合我们全部的想法，打造出这部喜剧杰作。最后我们看到动词 surpass 指胜过或是优于。举例来说 Last month's sales surpassed the previous best for the company. 上个月的业绩超越了该公司先前的最佳成绩。也可以说 Sales of the singer's new album surpassed those of his previous releases. 那名歌手新专辑的销量超过了他先前发过专辑的总销量。另外补充这个字的同义字 excel E-X-C-E-L excel 这个字是动词，意思是突出或是胜过他人。我们可以说 Since Diana excelled at math and science, her parents sent her to a specialized school. Diana 在数学和科学方面表现优异，因此她父母把她送到一间专门的学校去。 或是 I sometimes remind myself no one is perfect and I cannot excel at everything. 我有时候会提醒自己，没有人是完美的，而且我不可能擅长每件事。
So back to our talk about cyborgs, people who have certain devices implanted in their bodies. Now, it is true that many of these people probably wouldn't describe themselves as cyborgs, but rather as people making use of the latest medical technology. So these people who have implants in their bodies may not consider themselves to be cyborgs because perhaps that term is still associated with science fiction. Rather, they think of themselves simply as people who have certain examples of medical technology placed in their bodies to help them live better.
And moving on here, it says others, though, are more eager to embrace the term. So again, most people probably don't think of themselves as cyborgs, but other people, they like that term. They want to embrace that term. To embrace here means to give somebody a big hug. If somebody returns from overseas and you haven't seen them for a while, you can embrace each other at the airport there and cry and stuff like that. But in this particular case, it means that you like this word and you want to use it.
Yep, and to embrace can also mean to completely accept something. So certain countries are very eager and ready to embrace people from other countries, foreigners, while other countries may not be so quick to embrace foreigners. That's an example of the word embrace. Now, going back to cyborgs, it says here, take, for example, Kevin Warwick, an English professor who claims to be the world's first cyborg. In 2002, he had the nerves in his left arm connected to an implant capable of sending signals to a computer.
That's pretty impressive. Okay, usually we don't think that the nerves in our bodies can connect to machines, but this professor, Kevin Warwick, was able to do just that. He had the nerves in his left arm connected to an implant, and that implant was capable of sending signals to a computer. And among other things, the implant allowed him to control a robot hand using just his own movements. So that implant could allow him to do lots of things. That's why we say among other things. This isn't the only thing that this implant could do, but among those other things, the one thing the implant could do was allow him to control a robot hand using his own movements. And of course, he could do other things as well.
Right. And as an example of the usage of among other things, I could also say, among other things, the book was about the current state of computer technology. So that would mean that the book was about many things. It could be about medical technology and about artistic technology. Among other things, however, the book was also about the current state of computer technology.
I could also say that my friend Felicia is very talented. She can play the piano, among other things. She can do other things besides play the piano. So again, this professor had this device implanted in his arm and allowed him to control a robot hand. Similarly interested in enhancing normal human abilities is Moon Rebus, a dancer and cyborg activist whose arm implant enabled her to sense earthquakes happening anywhere in the world. So this is another example. We've got Moon Rebus, who is a dancer and a cyborg activist. So similarly interested in enhancing normal human activities is Moon Rebus. In other words, she's similar to Kevin Warwick, in which she wants to use cybernetics to help her do things in normal life. Here it says she's interested in enhancing normal human abilities. So that means she wants to do more with her body than the body is capable of. So if you enhance something, you make it do better, you improve its performance. For example, I could say maybe you can take a picture with your camera, but it's kind of out of focus and it's underexposed. You can run it through a computer program to enhance that picture to make it better.
And indeed, there is a term for those who want to merge humans with machines. So there is a term for people like Moon Rebus, who like the idea of merging humans with machines. To merge means to combine. Known as transhumanists, These people hope that by incorporating technology into the human body, they can surpass the limits of regular people and become something altogether smarter, faster, and stronger, a post-human. So what these people would like to do is that they would like to incorporate technology into their bodies so that their own limits can surpass. To surpass means to be greater or to be better than something else. In this case, they would like their own bodies to be greater, to be better, to surpass the limits of regular people, those who do not have implants in their bodies, so that they can become smarter, faster, and stronger.
Right, so these people who are known as transhumanists want to improve the body. They want the body to surpass their limits and do something even better. And we're also referring to these people as post-human, somebody who's better than the normal person. That sounds good and bad at the same time. We'll get to that later. Let's move on now to the third part of our lesson, and we'll listen to it first.
At the moment, people like Warwick and Rebus are mostly using a DIY approach, employing open-source technology to improve their own bodies. But as the relevant technologies develop and state-of-the-art commercial options become available, we need to consider the potential problems. Could we soon see a world where regular people are ruled over by a wealthy post-human superclass? Could companies end up spying on us through our artificial body parts, or perhaps flood our brain implants with advertising that we can never tune out? Fearing such a future, some people, known as bioconservatives, believe that cyborg technology should be limited to medical use only, and that it should be used not to enhance human capabilities, but to restore them. Indeed, as the age of the cyborg dawns, we must ask ourselves whether such enhancements might in fact eliminate the very thing that makes us human.
Now, at the moment, people like Warwick and Rebus are mostly using a DIY approach, employing open source technology to improve their own bodies. So people like Warwick and Rebus are doing things on their own. They're doing it themselves, DIY, which means that they are using information and technology that they can get freely on the internet. That's what open source technology means, to make their own bodies better. So in other words, they are not going to specialists or doctors or scientists to get what they want.
Yep, they're using a DIY approach. As you know, means do it yourself here. It goes on to say, but as the relevant technologies develop and state-of-the-art commercial options become available, we need to consider the potential problems. So indeed, we've got all these technologies that are being developed, and we've got these state-of-the-art commercial options. An option, of course, is a choice, and if something is state-of-the-art, that means it's the latest version of that thing. It's at the cutting edge of technology, and because these words are modifying the word options there, commercial options, then we put hyphens in there, state-of-the-art commercial options or state-of-the-art technology. And as they become available, well, we need to think about the problems that they might present. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? Are we going to make superhumans that can cause problems and criminals can use them to rob banks, or governments can use them to kill their enemies, or can we use them for the common good? Yeah, that's a pretty good question.
Yes, so we have to think about the future of a cyborg technology. Could we soon see a world where regular people are ruled over by a wealthy post-human superclass? That's a possibility. Or could companies end up spying on us through our artificial body parts, or perhaps flood our brain implants with advertising that we can never tune out? So the first possibility is that there might be inequality amongst human beings because we have people who are able to afford cyber technology integrated into their bodies, so they become better, stronger, smarter, and those who cannot, so they may be controlled by the wealthy post-human superclass. Another possibility is that if we have artificial body parts. Artificial here means man-made, not natural, if we have these implants in our bodies, then governments and officials could use those artificial body parts to control our thoughts or to make us think about buying certain products through advertising that we cannot control.
That's right. So maybe rich people could use them to create a superhuman race, and companies could spy on us, or governments could spy on us using those artificial body parts, and we get advertisements in our heads that we could never tune out. And if you tune something out, you basically just reduce its influence so it doesn't bother you. If you're in a restaurant and there are people talking loudly, well, you can tune them out by putting on your headphones so you can't hear them. And fearing such a future, some people known as bioconservatives believe that cyborg technology should be limited to medical use only and that it should be used not to enhance human capabilities, but to restore them. Your capability refers to what you can do, so they're just against having implants in people which would improve their capabilities of spying on us or jumping over tall buildings, etc., etc.
Right. So an example of the use of the word capability, I could say, David has the capability of being very successful only if he would apply himself more.
Yep, he needs to work harder. So here it finishes off here by saying, indeed, as the age of the cyborg dawns, we must ask ourselves whether such enhancements might in fact eliminate the very thing that makes us human. Yet we gotta watch out for these implants. They may turn us into machines and we won't be human ever again. Would you like to grow up in a world like that? Not me. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Let's turn things over to Hanny now.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny， 今天要来练习篇章结构的题型。那这篇文章是关于 cyborg， 我们从文章的第一句就可以了解到 cyborg 是描述一个既是活生生的肉体又是机器的生物。那同学们应该就猜得到这个字是在指半机械人咯。那我们接着来看看4个选项的句子。好， A 选项他说Known as transhumanists, these people hope that by incorporating technology into the human body, they can surpass the limits of regular people and become something altogether smarter, faster, and stronger, a post-human. 好，这边他其实提到说有一群人被称为 transhumanists， 然后希望借由将科技融入人体，超越普通人的极限，点。好，我们就听到有一个名词叫做 transhumanist， 后面还有提到一个名词 a post-human， 像这样子。好，那我们再来看到 B 选项，他说 But as the relevant technologies develop and state-of-the-art commercial options become available,We need to consider the potential problems. 他提到说，随着相关技术发展，怎么样，我们需要考虑潜在的问题。这边可以推测这个句子应该会出现在文章的后半部。当他介绍完 cyborg 还有它的应用之后，才来讨论说未来可能出现的问题。再看到 C 选项，他说It is true that many of these people probably wouldn't describe themselves as cyborgs, but rather as people making use of the latest medical technology. 确实，这些人当中有许多人可能不会自称是 cyborg， 而是使用最新医疗科技的人。然后 D 选项他说 They are the hundreds of thousands of people with inner ear implants that restore their lost hearing, for example. 好，那这边是以数十万装有用来恢复丧失听力的内耳植入物的人为例。那我们这边就可以先预设呢，选项 C 和 D 会出现在文章的前半部，这两个选项的前后文应该就是会讨论到那一些使用植入物啊，使用最新医疗科技的人。那我们接着就来做题目。好，第一个空格它的前一句有提到说 cyborg 确实就在我们身边。然后空格后面又提到说，帕金森氏症患者利用大脑深处的植入物来控制症状。我们从这两个线索可以推测，空格的句子是在讲日常生活中跟 cyborg 有关的例子。所以答案要选 D。他说，譬如说，他们是数十万装有恢复丧失听力的内耳植入器的人。好，再看到第二个空格出现在第二段的第一句，空格后方呢，他写到说 ，Others though are more eager to embrace the term。不过啊，有些人则更渴望接受这个用语。好，那这里有使用带有转折语气的 though， 就是表达不过。好，那我们可以推测说，这两个句子就会呈现出对比的状况咯。答案应该要选 C。他说，确实这些人当中有许多人可能不会自称是 cyborg， 而是使用最新医疗科技的人。那这个选项它就具有承接第一段，然后再带出第二段内容的作用了。好，第三个空格，它前一句提到说，Indeed, there is a term for those who want to merge humans with machines. 的确有一个用语用来称那些想要将人类与机器融合在一起的人。那可以推测空格是要接着说明那一个用语嘛？好，那我们的选项 A 一开始就提到说 known as transhumanists， 被称为超人类主义者，而且又接着说明这些人希望通过将科技融入人体来超越普通人的极限等等等等，我们就可以知道选项 A 会是正确答案了。好，那第四个空格，我们看到它之后的句子呢，是一连串的担忧，担心这个 cyborg 可能引发的问题。我们的选项 B 呢，就有提到说要考虑潜在的问题，所以答案应该就是选 B。他说，但随着相关技术发展与最先进的商用选择可以取得，我们需要考虑潜在的问题。那这个句子就可以用来带出后面它一连串的疑问跟担忧咯。好，那么以上是今天的讲解，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Symptom. If your symptoms get worse, you should see a doctor. Embrace. The philosopher's ideas have been embraced by right-wing politicians. Enhance. Some fresh herbs and lemon juice would really enhance the flavor of this dish. Merge. He plans to merge the two small companies into one large one. Artificial. You have to look closely to tell that these plants are artificial. Capability. Unfortunately, translating this passage is beyond my capability. Surpass. The beauty of the mountains surpassed all my expectations.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoyed reading along with us. I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.